This is the Moonlight Graham Show, a freewheeling conversation with the role players, the underdogs, and guys with flat-out great stories in sports.
Hello and welcome back to the Moonlight Graham Show, where we celebrate the role players and underdogs in sports. And today is episode 2 of season 13. And our Moonlighter for today is a guy by the name of John Klein. John Klein. OCO, Minnesota. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that hometown right. He's from just outside of the Twin Cities. The guy stands 6'5", 230 pounds. He's a big right-hander off the mound, and he throws gas. And a couple interesting things about John Klein that led me to wanting to get him on the podcast here as a Moonlighter. First and foremost, this guy went to Iowa Central Community College. He just finished his career at Iowa Central in the spring. Second of all, he just signed with the Minnesota Twins. So this guy is now a pro baseball player. He signed with the Twins out of Iowa Central. He forewent his last couple of years of eligibility to start his pro career. You don't see that all too often in junior college baseball, but when you do, it's guys with a really bright future and guys that have a potential to make the major leagues. And thirdly, interesting thing here about John is he didn't start pitching until his junior year in high school. Now, I didn't find this out. I did not know this about John before I interviewed him. But when I found that out, a lot of things started making sense, because when I saw John Klein pitch at Iowa Central, I saw this 6'5" righty that's throwing in the mid-90s, and I was wondering, how did Iowa Central end up with this guy? Because guys like this, more often than not, end up in Division I out of high school. But Coach Stein, the great recruiter at Iowa Central, found this guy, found this uncut gem out of Minnesota, and brought him down to Fort Dodge and turned him into one of the top junior college pitchers over the last couple of years. So the interesting thing about Iowa Central, of course, that's my alma mater. It's a place that I love. I love the baseball program there. Of course, it's in my hometown as well. But Iowa Central has never had a big leaguer. Now, they've had multiple guys make it to AAA. They've had guys with long pro careers. Of course, we've had Danny Lyons here on the podcast. He was back. I think he might have been episode 10 of the podcast, so 240 episodes ago. Danny played about 10 years in the minor leagues. You had Brett Jensen, who was from Eagle Grove, Iowa, had a great career at 1 year at Iowa Central and then a couple of years over at Nebraska, where he pitched in the College World Series. He ended up kind of in the wrong organization. He spent his minor league career in the Tigers organization, which that was like in the Joel Zumaya era. They were all about velocity. Jensen wasn't a velocity guy. He was a 6'7" submariner that had a great slider. He probably was in the wrong organization. And frankly, he probably retired a little bit too soon. Otherwise, Jensen should have been a major leaguer. And then there was another guy in the early 2000s named Greg Thyssen that made it up to AAA as well. But Iowa Central has never had a big leaguer, and they need one. And when I was talking to Eric Stein earlier this past spring, he was saying that he thinks John Klein has the chance to be Iowa Central's first ever big leaguer. Now, I don't want to put that type of pressure on John Klein. He's just starting his pro career now, but it's fun to talk to a guy, and I've said this before, that has his career still out in front of him, but has such a great Moonlighter underdog type of story that we can latch onto and we can pull for, we can root for as he is moving his way up the minor league ladder. So I think you guys are going to enjoy this episode with Moonlighter, John Klein. Moonlighters, are you or someone you know moving down to Kansas City? Well, if you are, the one realtor that we trust and yet you need to be calling is the great Brian Sandvig. As you well know, Brian Sandvig is our producer here on the podcast, and there is not a better residential real estate advisor down in the Kansas City marketplace than Brian Sandvig. Call Brian Sandvig, shoot him a text. Hey, DM us on social media. We'll get you connected with Brian if you can't find him on all the socials, but he is there and he is active, and he is your Kansas City realtor, so give him a call. All right, John Klein, thank you for joining the Moonlight Graham Show, man. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. So the first question I got to ask is, I was born and raised in Fort Dodge, Iowa, where our alma mater, Iowa Central, is located. So my hesitancy to go to Iowa Central right away was because I just wanted to get out of my hometown. Now, eventually, I went to Iowa Central. It was a great decision for me. So thankful that I did that, went and played 2 years of baseball there. How did you end up in Fort Dodge playing baseball for Iowa Central?
Yeah, I believe it was like around my junior year of high school when all the recruiting and all that stuff's going on. I mean, I had a bunch of schools reaching out, and at this time I was a catcher my entire life, which not a lot of people know. So I had a bunch of like Division III schools in Minnesota like hit me up to come catch and stuff, and this was in the fall of my junior year, and then I just kind of first started pitching as a joke a little bit, and ended up getting a little recognition there, and then it'd kind of be half and half. Schools wanted me to pitch and catch, and so Stein just kind of reached out, and it's like we've heard a little bit about you. We'd love to have you on campus and stuff. And at the time, I kind of already thought I had my mind made up, but I was like, yeah, sure, I'll come and check it out, and just kind of fell in love with it right when I first got there.
What'd you fall in love with?
Just like the campus, just to feel it, because I was planning on going to a smaller junior college here in Minnesota, and it just kind of looked like a building. And then I went to Iowa Central there, and it looked like a actual big 4-year school almost. So
yeah, I think people would be blown away. I mean, it's changed so much even since I was there 15 years ago to if you walk on that campus, it's a legitimate college campus that I think changes people's perception of what junior colleges or community college are actually like.
For sure. Yeah. It's like a whole 4-year experience, but you still have all the community college incentives that come with it. So it's kind of get the best of both there.
So John, I did not know this about you, that you were a catcher. So were you like 6'5" behind the dish in high school?
No. So I was a late bloomer, as I'd say, and with the growth spurt and all that. So I was just a kind of small, skinny kid all the way up until junior year, and then never even thought about getting on a mound until one of my coaches just kind of was like, "You want to pitch?" I was like, "Yeah, sure, why not?" And I think I was up to like 87 or 88, something like that. And he was like, I mean, yeah, for someone who hasn't touched a mound in their whole life, that's pretty decent. And then sat down with a couple of my coaches, and they're like, I think like you might have a legit shot at pitching if you put in the work for it and solely focus on that, and convinced me. And now we're here.
When you say growth spurt, what are we talking about? Like, did you grow 8 inches in a year? Like, how much did you grow in a short amount of time?
I want to say freshman year of high school, I was probably 5'9", 5'10". And by the time I got to my junior year, I was up to like 6'3". And then by the time I graduated, got to 6'5", where I am now. So I was always just kind of like the small kid of the group. And now everyone looks up to me, which is weird, but I'll take it.
Yeah, I did. So I was even looking at your profile in high school, because in high school you were listed at like 6'4", and then at Iowa Central you were listed at like 6'5", 230. I'm like, did he grow? Was he still growing when he was at Iowa Central? You probably were still a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. Think we're done now, but who knows?
Yeah, who knows? When you say you never pitched, what do you mean by that? Like, did you literally never pitch, or just you did it for fun and never did it seriously? What do you mean by you never pitched before your junior year?
Yeah. So, I mean, like when you first start playing baseball and you play a different position each inning and all that stuff, like dabbled around with pitching a little bit in like 4th grade. And I was like, yeah, I just don't think that's for me. Kind of just fell in love with catching. Always grew up watching Joe Mauer, and he was just like the guy everyone wanted to be here in Minnesota. So just kind of always looked up to him, and just found my spot behind the plate. And then next thing I know, I was not even thinking about catching anymore. And And then, yeah, got into pitching.
I got to imagine being a pitcher in college after not doing it most of your childhood was fun because it was all new, right?
Yeah.
Like, and you were like this blank canvas where it's like, oh, that's a good idea. And you don't have these preconceived notions like, no, that doesn't work for me, or I've tried that before. And how is that process when you get to college and you're, a lot of things are coming at you very quickly, and you're essentially learning how to pitch against really good competition.
Right. Yeah. I feel that was probably where I grew the most, obviously, because didn't really get much pitching coaching as I was in high school, obviously, just a little bit. So I was nervous to go to college, as I feel everyone is, but I was really excited too to get some one-on-one almost on pitching and kind of just soak it all in. And yeah, like you said, not kind of have things set in my head on what I like, what I don't like, what I know works and all that. So just took it all in and kind of learned as I'd go.
When did it start clicking, and what made it click for you?
I don't know. I feel just each day showing up and just with the mindset that I was ready to learn and grow. And I think it just all kind of came together and was able to find some success early to help boost the confidence there too, to know that what everyone was saying was working, and just went from there.
So I know you're a power pitcher. You throw hard. You mentioned earlier that you were, throwing maybe 87, 88 in your junior year in high school. But then by the time your sophomore year at Iowa Central is done, you're mid 90s. And all of a sudden you're starting to light the radar gun up quite a bit. What type of pitcher were you? Is like, what was your secondary pitch? And like, what was in your head? How did you like to attack hitters?
Yeah. I mean, when I first got to college, I was pretty much just a fastball changeup guy. I didn't really know how to throw any breaking balls or any of that stuff. So that's the one thing I worked on the most, was developing like a curveball. And then just this last year, I added a slider too. So now I have a 4-pitch mix that I can use. And I'd say it's now a fastball slider that's usually go to. And the other 2 will be here and there each day, but they're still good. But yeah, I was able to throw changeups to righties my freshman year a lot, which I never realized that wasn't a thing, being new to pitching and everything. So I found a lot of success with just the 2 pitches there. And then now that I've added a few more, it's kind of easier to sequence hitters and attack them different ways.
It's amazing what baseball has become with all the data in it now. And I know even Iowa Central has like the Rapsodo machines and pitch tracks and all this stuff now. And it's really helping pitchers talk through their mix, like you're talking about right now. Like, you get to understand what my curveball looks like, what my slider looks like. How was that, or how much of that helped you in crafting the type of pitcher that you are now?
Oh, I feel that probably had the biggest impact on pitch development, because, you could throw one pitch one way with the one grip and it'll look a certain way, and then you do the exact same and just turn the ball a little bit maybe, and it might look like the same pitch, and then you look on the Rapsodo and the numbers are just drastically different. So just kind of using that to find a consistency too helped.
How often would you use it? Like, was that part of your regular bullpen? Was that part of like your off-season program? Like, how often are you guys looking at that data?
Yeah, we'd use it every bullpen at Iowa Central.
Everyone. Wow.
Yeah.
And are you poring over the numbers then and like really digging into it? Like, it's almost like a homework assignment after your bullpen?
Yeah. Like we'd look at it, and then Coach Flattery my freshman year, and then
Coach, right? Coach Flattery, hell of a coach.
Right. And then Coach Lovin my sophomore year there, they'd talk to us too about it and say what they like, what we like, and then just come to an agreement.
So the other part is like building arm strength, building velocity. Most guys, it's always been kind of my theory that the biggest thing that holds people back from throwing harder is they get hurt and they just are not healthy. And if all of a sudden you hurt your arm and you got to have Tommy John, or you tear the labrum or rotator cuff, part of it is you're hurt and you got to have surgery. The other part is you're taking like a year off from throwing or 6 months off from throwing. Even if you got tendonitis, you're still taking days of the week off all the time. And you can never really develop arm strength that you need to throw hard. Now, I was always kind of lucky because I never got hurt. And so by the end of my college career, I was, throwing 93 miles an hour, something that I never thought I would get to. A lot of that I attribute to just being healthy. Like I never got hurt, so I could work out, I could throw all the time, I could lift, I could do all that stuff, the weight training that you needed. But we didn't have much science around it. Like it was just long toss programs, weight training, arm care stuff. Now there's so much science behind what you're doing each and every day. Talk to me a little bit about what you did at Iowa Central to build velocity and maybe like where it took you from velocity, where you were at in high school to where you're at today.
Yeah, for sure. I'd say the number one thing is the weight room, obviously. I mean, the mass equals gas quote I'm a believer in. So yeah, I mean, I did a little bit of like weight training in high school and stuff, but never like got into it. And then when you get to school, you obviously bulk up quite a bit. And that's when I saw a pretty big change from, like high school, like I said, 87, 88. And then even early into the fall at my freshman year at Iowa Central, I was up to like 91, 92. So yeah, I'd definitely just say the weight room is where you get the velocity at.
How big of a deal is Eric Sim, the JUCO bandit, when you're going to a JUCO now? Like we've had him on the podcast. He's a big mass equals gas guy. He's always doing the big deadlifts and lifting weights and throwing hard. Like, do you guys all follow him and watch him and what he's doing every day?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Especially when I was at Iowa Central, we'd always be showing each other all of his posts and all of his TikToks and all the stuff he makes. But yeah, I feel he was a great way to help grow the JUCO world and show that there's talent everywhere, not just at the highest levels in college baseball.
What did you think of Fort Dodge when you were there for 2 years? Because obviously if you go to a 4-year school, you're in cities like Minneapolis or Iowa City, like great party towns, and there's a great party scene. A lot of times in JUCOs, even if you're at Iowa Central, which has a great campus and a lot of stuff going on, most people are going to leave on the weekend to go somewhere else. So what did you think of being in Fort Dodge for those 2 years that you were there?
No, I absolutely loved it. Being from like a suburb of Minneapolis here, like the high school I went to was in a smaller town, but it was just surrounded by bigger towns. And then I went there and it's like about the same size town, but it's just surrounded by farms and cornfield and stuff. So just kind of, you're just stuck in there, it felt like, but it was good, dude. I feel we had a really good team chemistry each year. You'd see each other every day. So you'd build those relationships and become a family. So yeah. It was good to be around everybody.
I talked about this with Coach Stein when I had him on the pod, and you go to a junior college and I loved it. And it sounds like you had a great experience there too, but a lot of guys don't make it. And there's a lot of ways that you can get tripped up, whether it's partying or girls or drinking and driving or grades, or you get homesick. And you see a lot of guys, I never thought somebody would get homesick and leave. And I saw a bunch of guys do that, or guys getting fights, like at the local bar, they get in fights with their teammates, stuff like that. What do you think it takes to be successful at a junior college, in particular at Iowa Central?
I feel it's all like in your mindset. You got, excuse me, you just got to realize you're there to play baseball, and you've been doing this your whole life. So it's what you've kind of worked for, and now you're working for something bigger. So just always having that in the back of your head and not let the outside distractions get to you. And I feel both the teams I was a part of, the mindset was there. We're all there to win, and it showed with our records and success we had the 2 years I was there.
Well, you got to get back to the World Series, man. Like, that was the thing. When I was at Iowa Central, we were going to the World Series all the time. We went my sophomore year, my younger brother's class. That was like, maybe 08 or 10. When was the last time they were there? Maybe 10 was the last time that they were there. And they haven't been since. So it's been 12 years since Iowa Central's been there. They've been on the doorstep a number of times over the last 5 to 7 years here, but they got to get back, man.
Right. I agree.
So wrapping up your 2 years, you're signed with Kansas State, great baseball program down there. They actually won the Big 12 title when my brother went there after Iowa Central. So great spot to go play, especially in the Big 12, which is such a great baseball league. But that's not how it ended up for you. So talk me through like that draft process and the signing process and how all that went down to get you to make the decision that, hey, I'm not going to go to Kansas State and I'm going to start my pro career now.
Yeah. Yeah. So I had a pretty crazy summer. So I was playing in the Northwoods League with the Wilmer Stingers. And then, I was supposed to end up going there. And then there's some things that went down that had to open up the recruiting process again. So then a couple weeks later, I picked a Division II school here in Minnesota. And then about a week later, I was signing with the Twins. So it was just like a whole 4-week up and down, just craziness. But it all worked out in the end. So it was good.
Was it hard to give up school?
Yeah, it was kind of in the back of my head. Like, I mean, every minor leaguer knows the odds of making it and all that stuff. So I was like, I'm halfway done. I could just finish it out and see what happens. But I just felt like the time was right and I was mentally and physically ready to go. And when I got there, I was like, yeah, this is the right decision. This is what I wanted to do.
Would you have made the same decision if it wasn't the Twins? Because obviously being a Minnesota kid, growing up idolizing Joe Mauer, if it was like the White Sox who called, would you maybe have had a different decision?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. What was it like then, your pro debut? Wearing what uniform are you wearing? Like, is that the Gulf Coast Twins or what? Who are they?
Yeah. So it's called the Florida Complex League now. That's what the rookie affiliate is down there. So we have the full Twins and red and blue and white, and we're wearing all that. So it was pretty surreal just going to my locker the first day and seeing my name with those jerseys in it.
And then you make 2 appearances in the fall to get your feet underneath you. And then what are you doing in this off season?
Yeah. So the first appearance I made, we were playing the Red Sox, I believe. And we had like set innings we'd throw. So I had like the 5th or the 6th inning, something like that. And so I'm walking down to the bullpen to like get loose. And I wasn't like nervous at all during the day, but once I started walking to the bullpen, the legs started getting a little shaky. And then when I went out there, just had to remember to breathe. Like we've always been told at school and everything. And then like after I threw my first pitch, pretty sure it was a ball, but it was all right. Once that happened, it was easier to just settle in. But yeah, now going to like the off season stuff, they gave us like a whole lifting and throw in and run in and all that planned stuff. So they took care of us pretty well.
In pro ball, you're going to have a walkout, right? Did you have walkouts at Iowa Central? Do you have walkout songs?
Yeah.
What was your walkout at Iowa Central?
Mine was TNT by AC/DC.
Oh, old school then.
Oh yeah.
Are you going to stick with that walkout in pro ball?
I'm not sure. I haven't decided about that. There's one song too, Big Bad John. Someone played as like joke something.
Is that like Big John?
Yeah.
Big Bad John. Oh, I like that one.
Uh-huh.
I think there's a difference. Like if you're a starter, I think you should have one walkout. But if you're if you're a closer down the road, I think that's a totally different thing. Like I don't think you can use the same walkout being a starter in a closer. So you got to put that into it. Like if you're going to be starting in pro ball, maybe you can play Big John because it takes a while to kind of get to the point of that song. But coming out of the bullpen, TNT, it hits you right away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know, because I'm a country music guy, so I'm like, you can't walk out to country music. You're gonna put everyone to sleep, and it just doesn't get you going. So yeah, I don't know. We'll have to look into that once the time comes.
What are your thoughts? Obviously, Iowa Central has played at Ed Barber Field on campus there for a long time. It's a beautiful setting for baseball. Unfortunately, the field's kind of been falling into the ravine for the last 15 years now, and they've just built this brand new turf field with a green monster out and left. It looks phenomenal in Fort Dodge there. What are your thoughts about Iowa Central getting away from Ed Barber?
Oh yeah, I mean, I've seen pictures of the new field and everything. It looks great, but like, yeah, there's nothing like the Ed, just walking down the hill every day to go practice and play there. But yeah, I feel it's either one's great if you get to play at both of them.
Right. So was Mauer your guy growing up? Twins fan?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he was my guy too. Like, I'm 15 years older than you, and he was my guy too, even though I'm like the same age as Mauer. But I was also like a big Brad Radke guy, loved Johan. Actually loved Jesse Crane, believe it or not. Remember Jesse Crane?
I do.
Yeah. Who's your favorite guy now?
I don't know. I haven't really. There's always so many guys getting called up and down in there. They never really have a set lineup. But
have you had a chance to meet like any of the Twins legends down in Florida?
Yeah. So that's actually their rehab spot too. So like, if any guy gets hurt in any of the affiliates, they go there to rehab. So when I was down there, I saw Randy Dobnak, Kenta Maeda, Royce Lewis.
Nice.
Ryan Jeffers was down there. He caught one of my bullpens one time, so that was pretty sweet. Trevor Larnach. Yeah, just a bunch of guys always in and out of there. So it's pretty cool just sitting down and eating with them and all that.
Well, that's awesome, man. And I'm so glad that you signed with the Twins, because I'm a big Twins fan myself, and I'm a former Triton myself too. So to see a guy like you have success at Iowa Central and then move on and start having success in the Twins organization, just couldn't be happier for you. I'm really thrilled about your success and wish you nothing but the best moving forward here, John.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and thanks for coming on the pod.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So as you guys all know, the Houston Astros are the World Series champs for this year. And one thing that I always do every year, and I know I'm not the only one that does this, I know a lot of folks do this, but you always look up, the guy on the bottom of the roster or the guy that appeared in one game that's like, man, is that guy going to get a World Series ring? You always hear about playoff shares and, maybe somebody that's on the playoff roster but never actually appeared in the postseason. I like to look back to the regular season roster to see who played like the least amount of games. That's probably the most likely to get a World Series ring. It's my understanding that most guys, if you played in, a handful of games at least, you're probably going to get a World Series ring. I don't think it necessarily goes to any guy that suited up for that team that year, if they just played one inning of one game, but I'm not positive about that. So the guy kind of at the bottom of that list for Houston this year is none other, and if you're a Twins fan, you'll recognize this name. It's Niko Goodrum. And I was not aware that Niko Goodrum was on the Astros this year, and I just cannot believe that. So Niko Goodrum, I guess for those of you that don't know, he was a second-round pick of the Minnesota Twins back in 2010. And actually, Niko Goodrum is 30 years old. He's born February 28th of 1992. I'm born February 27th. So I always like guys in February. So I've always rooted for Niko Goodrum because he came up with the Twins. He's born in February. So naturally, he's one of my favorite guys. But Niko Goodrum has been a pretty disappointing prospect over the course of his career. But he followed essentially Ron Gardenhire over to Detroit, and he got his first actually appearance with the Twins up in 2017 when he was 25 years old. He came up, he hit 0-59 in 11 games. And then essentially he followed Ron Gardenhire over to Detroit, and Gardy brought a bunch of ex-Twin prospects over with him that had been released by Minnesota at the time. And he ends up playing, 4 years for Detroit, hits 245, 248, 184, and then 214 in 4 years at Detroit. So Nico was always a pretty below average Major League Baseball player, but the thing about him was he played a bunch of positions. You could play him anywhere in the infield. You could play him in the outfield. He was a good athlete. He was a switch hitter. So he added a lot of tools for a team, and he was a quality bench guy. So you can see why a team like Houston would see some value in that as a guy that they could have on the bench, right-handed hitter, left-handed hitter, infield, outfield, coming off the bench in a lot of different ways for them, for a team that had a lot of spots filled. So this year with Houston, he played 15 games total, hit 116 for him, had an on-base percentage of 156. Nico Goodrum is a career 226 hitter, career on-base percentage of 299, and he's got a World Series ring, and Joe Mauer doesn't. I just always think that's crazy. I mean, good for Nico Goodrum. Good for Nico Goodrum. I hope he's part of the parade and the celebration coming up here, because I always love those underdog guys. Even if he was a second-round draft pick, I still love that a guy like Nico Goodrum is going to get a ring. That's the fun part about baseball. But as a Twins fan, it pains me, and I hope that someday my Minnesota Twins can be playing in the World Series, and I can go up to a victory parade in Minneapolis someday. So I hope you all enjoyed the World Series. I hope you're enjoying this season of the podcast. Have a great week, Moonlighters.
It's Moonlight Graham, yeah. It's a pretty good program, broadcasting to the heartland. Sports stories for the everyman. It's Moonlight Graham, yeah. Please follow us on Instagram. You're loving us on Twitter too. You download every pod we do. It's Moonlight Graham.